Welcome to Unmasked, the CEO Files, and I have my YPO friend Dusty Holcomb with us today, coming to us from Charlotte, North Carolina. Closest I've been to you was Pinehurst, which was a phenomenal experience.
That's a good place to be.
It is a good place to be. I want to start with just reading a little bit from your LinkedIn profile, which kind of sets the table for the conversation we want to have on leadership today. So allow me to read this for a moment and then we'll dive right in. So you say that leadership isn't about making decisions. It's about making the right ones at the right time with the right people. And even the most accomplished CEOs and senior leaders hit a wall. Even if you have a bold vision, translating that to an aligned team, clear strategies, and sustainable growth can feel harder than it should. Leadership can be isolating. We do know that. And the weight of high stakes decisions is real. You believe that leadership starts with self leadership, owning your time, priorities, and mindset with intention. And when leaders operate with clarity, alignment, and purpose, their teams and organizations follow. What a great way to tee us up for the conversation we're going to have today on leadership. So, welcome to Unmask the CEO Files.
I am delighted to be here. Thank you so much. This is going to be it's so much fun. Really looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward. We're going to start in YPO fashion with an icebreaker, because if our podcast is about being unmasked, we want to see the real Dusty, and I know we will today, and I'm excited about that. So if I were to ask you this question, if you must know one thing about me, you must know this.
Okay, so I thought about that, and when you like, it is such a classic YPO question because you can answer the 95%, but then you need to drill to the 5%. So I'm going to give you the 5%. If you must know one thing about me, it is that because I grew up in a homeschooled environment, very autodidactic, learned everything from reading.
Wow.
I developed a chip on my shoulder because I didn't feel very smart, because I didn't have the classic training in a scholastic environment. And so I grew up with this absolute need to prove myself, to validate worth, to validate that I was actually, smart. And it took me years to uncover the fact that the greatest gift of learning I received was learning how to read multiple disparate texts and ideas and formulate my own. So if you have to know anything about me, you have to know that I'm a recovering chip on my shoulder guy, and I still have it, and I have to fight it every day. So I'm going to the 5% with that answer.
I love that. So tell me how that manifests in your work. Could you recognize that in others?
Yeah, it manifests in my work in the sense that I recognize I have something to prove. Like, I'm always driving and striving and, wanting to achieve, to prove that, that I have worth. And I think it's a classic founder, like, it's not a new thing. A lot of people have this. Because I see it in myself, and I've spent years learning to recognize this and reconcile what it means, I think it's made it easier for me to see it in others and then ask questions to really uncover the root issue. Because when we see the root, we can start to figure out, hey, do we need to make change? Is this a superpower or a strength that helps you? And, one of my mentors guided me and gave me some great advice once, which was, hey, that thing that made you so incredibly successful, it will become your binding constraint if you don't learn how to overcome it. Like, if you just put all your effort on that strength. So for me, when I work with others, it helps me find the pressure points so we can talk about root cause, not symptom.
Love it. We'll talk about clarity later because that's an important part of your stance. But let's go to the backstory. So how did you get to this place where you are in your
It,
life?
yeah, it's thumbs out on the side of a highway, hitchhiking. No, I wish that'd actually be kind of cool. As I said, I grew up in a homeschooled environment from fifth grade through high school, and didn't realize what a benefit that was. Learned everything through reading. I loved history. I loved
Yeah.
military history specifically, and was fascinated with behavior, how people made decisions, how people thought. In fact, I thought I was either going to be a historian or a psychologist. And then I got into college and I realized, I like psychology, but I don't love it. And I don't want to teach history. I actually want to be part of creating some history, doing something that matters. And kind of by default, I figured out, hey, I'm going to go into get a business degree. And then I found organizational behavior and management. And I went, ooh, now I get psychology. Now I get,
Yeah.
building something. and just had the amazing gift of falling under the wing of a retired colonel at 21 years old.
Wow.
And I was working in a call center, and I probably got 4 master's degrees worth of leadership working under him for just
Wow.
3 years. All the nuggets, all the pearls, all the seeds that were planted to help me understand what leadership is and isn't. And that really propelled me on this journey to be fascinated with how do I become better as a leader so that I can empower success in others. And that's been my personal mission statement for almost 30 years now. And I was able to do that for 28 years in a corporate environment. I was able to
Yeah.
do that living it out loud in corporate. And then after my last exit, I decided, I feel compelled and called to follow my passion and to really make a ding in the universe, to quote Steve Jobs, and make an impact, because I don't think people have to work for jackasses. I think that
Yeah.
leadership and figuring
Agreed.
out how to grow yourself as a leader is the most impactful thing we as humans can do. And not through the lens of title, but through the lens of influence, because that's what leadership is.
Love it. I want to come back to the mentorship experience with your colonel, but I'm curious because you talked about the chip on your shoulder. You talked about going from homeschool to college. Now, can you tell me about the transition and what you learned about yourself moving, kind of socially to a different world? Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, it was not easy. Like I didn't know how any of the social norms, the high school stuff, proms,
Yeah.
etc. And when I got to college, I had to take a GED, a general equivalency
Yeah.
diploma,
Yeah.
and scored okay, passed, yay. But I also took the SAT, and because I was not a person who slept with a math textbook under my pillow, I didn't have the foundations of mathematics training. So when I get to college or get ready for my SAT, I didn't do well on math, crushed verbal, didn't do well on math. And so I get to college admissions, and the counselor looked at me and goes, well, you have a GED and here's your SAT scores. Perhaps you should consider a trade school. College really isn't cut out for everyone. And I, being a chip on my shoulder guy, now recognizing that didn't know it now, then of course, I kind of went, okay, I see your challenge. Let me get after it. But learning how to get into college, take those courses, and then realizing, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this stuff.
Hmm.
And then falling in is the wrong word, choosing to go out and join a fraternity and getting into social environments where I could learn different thinking paradigms, like how to lead. I very quickly
Yeah.
became a president of our fraternity and all these things. But it was because I was always focused on gaining knowledge. And you probably grew up too fast. I was, working full time when I was 16. I had entrepreneurial ventures. Like I don't think I ever had the kid experience or the college experience, but that was okay because I just knew how to grind.
Hmm.
So socially learning how to do it, it was finding and surrounding myself with people who had been there and people I liked, and just
Hmm.
learning.
You're an incredibly curious man, right? That's part of what makes you. Yeah,
Yes, very much so.
clearly. So did you know at some point, so you mentioned that you became president of the fraternity. Uh, I'm curious about this question. Was leadership thrust upon you, or did you seek it out?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I saw a hole and leaned into it in the fraternity specifically. When on the business side, I sought it out because I saw it as a path to income, opportunity, grinding,
Hmm.
like opportunities for growth. And that was one of the things Greg taught me. It's like I was pursuing management because I thought management would give me more perks. It would be, things I
Yeah.
could do and grow. And then I learned what I really wanted to pursue, leadership. And those were two entirely different things.
Yeah.
So I started pursuing it out of a desire for self. And then I fell in love with it because of the desire to serve.
I want to come back to the leadership versus management thing because people confuse that all the time. But I want to dive in for a moment to the mentorship relationship. I think you said his name was Greg.
Yes.
So, how did it start? And talk to us about the experience.
Yeah. So I was working in the bank as a teller. In fact, I left a sales job in a high end men's retail store at 18, 19 years old and took a job at the bank for like $3 an hour less. Now, this is 30 years ago. It's a big
Yeah.
deal, but it was because I wanted to get into the bank system. In fact, when I was 16, quick sidebar story, I somehow connected in with the CEO of the bank, Columbus Bank and Trust in Columbus, Georgia, and got on his calendar. I mean, incredibly gracious guy, Sam Welburn, for a informational interview. So I go in there, coat and tie, and Sam says, "Well, Dusty, what would you like to learn?" I said, "Sam, I'd love to learn about banking, and learn about the business. I'm exploring what I want to do as a career." And he goes, "Great. And what do you want to get from this?" And he said, I told him, I said, frankly, Sam, I'm going to go to college and I'd like to decide if your bank is a place I'd want to work. Now I sit there and go, man, what? I'm so lucky he didn't throw me out of his office. Like I'm there to interview him. Um, I didn't know any better. All of that to say, as I transitioned from the working in the bank as a teller, and that's why I took that opportunity because I even though it was a pay cut, I knew it would be a good place. I thought I would spend my career there.
Mm.
And then I said, "Ooh, there's an opportunity to make more in a call center." And this appealed to me. So I go and I interview and apply. And I remember the very first time I applied for I'd been in the call center 6 months,
Yeah.
loved it. It was fun. Applied for a supervisory role. I didn't get it. And Greg pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Dusty, really appreciate you applying." I was 21, maybe
Mm.
even 20.
Hmm.
And you're going to get your opportunities. You're going to get your shots. This other person has been here longer, deserves it, and grossly better than I was. And but you're going to get your shot. Hang in there. Here's what I'd like you to work on to be ready for the next phase.
Love it.
And so that was my experience. Like it wasn't a no, it was a not yet. And here's what you need to do. And that was like I only worked for him for 3 years, but obviously those lessons, those were seeds that were planted deep.
And when you had was it a mentorship mentee relationship, or was it just because you worked for him? Like which was it? Was it formal?
It was not formal. It was not a stated formal process. It was the way he showed up. I didn't know it at the time, right? I didn't
Yeah.
say he's my
Yeah.
mentor. Only in hindsight can I go, wow, this was a mentor because everything Greg did was leadership, how he showed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And that was like another one of the lessons. Everything was leadership. When Greg lost his temper, it wasn't him losing his temper. It was him sending a message. It was all intentional. And so many things were carried forward from that.
So what a great example for leaders to think about, because we all know that there are leaders that, are very verbal and either good communicators or bad communicators. But wouldn't you agree that they communicate more by their actions than they do by their words?
100%. Like St. Francis of Assisi said, it's no use walking anywhere to preach unless your walking is your preaching.
I
And
love
like
that.
that,
Yeah.
that is like everything. Like
Yeah.
don't say words, show up.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, words are cheap.
Those are
Actions
true.
is leadership. Behavior is leadership. And I completely agree with that sentiment.
And when you think about sometimes the words are incongruent with the actions, and that's really a trap for leaders, isn't it?
Oh, it's not only a trap, it's poison because it's a poison about what they want. If they say they want something and they don't behave in that way, what
Yeah.
they're doing is they are intentionally, and I say that very, very specifically, they are intentionally lowering the bar of expectations for everyone
Yeah.
in their organization. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. I was working with the CEO just earlier this week, and he told me, he said, "Hey, we were talking through a schedule, and I asked him about his number one challenge. He goes, I don't have time. I am overwhelmed. My calendar's full,
Yeah.
all these things." He says, "My worry is I can't say no to all these meetings, but I don't have time to do any of the work that comes from doing these meetings." And I said,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's decode this for a second.
Yeah.
Behaviorally, what are you telling your organization is okay? And he gets thought for a second. He goes, that it's okay not to follow up. I said, yes. And is that okay? He goes, absolutely not. I said, so
Yeah.
when you set aside time to close the loop, to do the work you've committed to give yourself the white space, what are you teaching the organization? He said, to execute on commitments. I said, which one do you want to do?
Brilliant.
Which one do you want to do?
I love that. So it kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about. Give us your definition of the distinction or the fusing between management and leadership, because That gentleman is suffering with part of that problem.
He is. I think of management, well, not all leaders are managers and not all managers are leaders, certainly. I think of management as the focus on the delivery of business results. Like it's the outcome orientation. And it's like, hey, I'm managing processes, I'm managing business results, I'm managing this. And you can be a good leader and do that, and you can be a horrible leader
Yeah.
and still be a decent manager.
Yeah.
And the difference is the leader is ensuring that people know where we're going, how we're going to get there, and what they are responsible and accountable for delivering. And then they make sure that the people, can connect the dots to deliver on the expected outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's a huge distinction. I've worked for maybe 12 or 15 people in my career, and three of them were leaders.
Wow.
Only three, and I've talked to a lot of people in my life, and that ratio of somewhere between 15 and 30% is what I hear, and it's part of the reason that like I knew I needed to do what I'm doing today.
Why does that make me so sad?
Yeah, it makes me sad, and it makes me frustrated, and that means that so many people never have a shot to work with and for someone who is really focused on creating success for other people. And that's it. Like leaders are worried about ensuring others
Yeah.
can be successful, and it doesn't mean that that person's in the right seat or even in the right organization. But if you and I work together and you're not a cultural alignment, I need to give you the opportunity to go to a place where you are culturally aligned and can be
Yeah.
successful, because you'll never be successful here. And so
Yeah.
there's huge difference.
There's a word you use, and I want to get it right. You say that you can't scale chaos, so you got to start with clarity instead. Let's talk about what clarity means for a leader before they can become a great leader. Walk me through what that means for you and for them.
Yeah, I think the first place that to start is people we focus on execution gaps. We focus on why isn't this thing getting done? Why aren't people doing their damn job? Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's almost never a problem with execution. If we have the right people, we have an issue with alignment and we have an issue with clarity. And what I think about with clarity first starts with self leadership.
Yeah.
You can't lead others at any level if you aren't leading yourself. And that goes to what we were talking about a minute ago regarding, holding yourself accountable, setting a standards, while managing behaviors. But do you know where you are going? Do
Yeah.
you have crystal clear clarity in your mind, not of how to do it,
Yeah.
but where you want to be, who you want to become, what the organization needs to look like, feel like, taste like it? If you don't have that,
Yeah.
everything else around it is just going to be uh, events, actions that are expanding to fill space.
Yeah.
But clarity is what allows you to focus. And so I like to think of clarity as the magnifying glass that allows us to focus the energy on the right thing.
Interesting. And to tie it to the work that we do in leadership branding, when we talk about clarity, it's about, does the leader understand what their leadership signal is
Mm.
when they're out there, right? And so that gets manifested in two ways. One is, are they clear on what they are as a leader? And are they really clear on where they're weak? And I'll give you an example for me
Mm.
where I go off of kilter is when people are late. So I have to be mindful of my behaviors and what it means to me when someone's late. So I've equated that to disrespect. It
Mm.
might not be, but that's my thing, right? As we talk about vulnerability, all leaders have those signals, both positive and negative. And when they understand that clarity, then they're able to go, I get me now. I got to be mindful of how I do that. So when you're working with leaders, self-awareness is a big deal.
Yes.
So walk me through the conversations you have with them on self-awareness if they haven't done kind of work on themselves as leaders.
Yeah, I love this, and it's so funny you ask it, and the time or the intentional placement of it is the first place to start. So we have a Vision to Victory Leadership Accelerator program that we put leaders through so they can install a leadership operating system. The first place we start is self-awareness.
Perfect.
And it's like, okay, to do anything we do in leading others, we got to know ourselves. And so we'll start with some behavioral assessments, multiple behavioral assessments that allow you to not have a picture of the truth, but to begin to triangulate on what the truth is. And so you have to hold up a mirror, but you have to take off the rose colored glasses. You have to see, here are the things that I do well. And here are the things that could present as gaps or challenges. And
Hmm.
how do I ensure that I'm not stepping all into that all the time? And how do I ensure that I'm not over leveraging these strengths? Like this self awareness, like you can say, hey, Dusty, you're a great communicator and you're good on stage. Well, that's fine. But if I step too hard or too far into that, I may not
Yeah.
be doing the things I need to do. Self awareness is understanding good challenges or gaps and leveraging your strengths to overcome, or making sure that you surround yourself with people or processes that enable you to be successful. And sometimes it's that's the most important thing.
Now, one of the challenges we know, you can be a great leader and have poor performance, and you can be a crappy leader and have great performance. How do you balance those conversations? Because I'm sure you have them every day
Mm.
with leaders. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and I've been both of those people, right? I've had been a good leader and had poor performance. You have to understand why. And so the first place is why. What are the levers that are being pulled? What are the desired outcomes? And like going back to clarity, oftentimes there's not clarity of what it is that we're
Mm,
really trying to achieve. All
hmm.
right, what is poor performance? Now let's go upstream from that and go, why is it happening?
Yeah,
Where is it being challenged? The leader is very interested in doing what's right, not who's right. The manager is very focused on being who's right, who do I blame, who like pointing
yeah,
fingers. Like the leader's going, okay, let's just figure this thing out. But you can be a good leader and have bad performance. Like there can
yeah,
be environmental issues, there can be things outside of your control. So there's a series of frameworks that you have to really go into and understand root cause, circle of control, circle of influence, circle of concern. Like where is this? What levers do you have? And that's ultimately what I try to work with leaders or leadership teams on and have done myself is what are the control levers that we can pull that will create the outcomes we want,
yeah,
and do we understand those? And I mean, I've seen horrible leaders create great business results,
yeah.
but there's something else in the organization that's not great along the way, whether it's culture or
Yeah.
there's other things. So you have to have a holistic understanding.
So let's dive into self-awareness and let's talk about authenticity as a leader. Uh, Obviously, we work in that space, so authenticity is a big piece of what we do, but I'd love your perspective on how you work with people on being themselves.
I think, and it's interesting just going back to where we started because I had this chip on my shoulder. I also had this like need and desire to please and like to fit
Mm,
in. And
yeah,
it took me a long time to realize that I was gifted with unique background, skills, talents, and capabilities, and to show up authentically, to show up vulnerably, to show up with trust and compassion that I can just be myself.
yeah.
And Alan, it took a long time for me to be comfortable with someone else not liking me for who I was as an
Mm,
authentic person.
interesting.
And so when I work with leaders, and we work, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this as well. Authenticity is when you don't have to amend or change what you believe to try and appeal to people who believe something different. But
Yeah,
in order to do that, going back to self awareness, you have to be
yeah.
crystal clear on what you believe, why you believe it, and how it should manifest. And when you get to that, you can be a truly authentic, real person and recognize, hey, like for me, I have a whole bunch of control systems built into my life because I'm a 100 miles an hour with my hair on fire kind of guy. And so I need systems and processes to prevent me from damaging myself and burning myself out.
That's
And
hilarious.
so like that, but those are things you build. And so working with leaders just to be authentic and say, hey, look, show up who you are, but you got to figure that out first. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Because you work in the same space.
Yeah, so I think there's a distinction between how people the authenticity that they show up with and the authority they have. I think
Great
they I
distinction.
think I think they confuse the two. And so authenticity to me is, if you and I were having this podcast today, if we were having a glass of wine in North Carolina, we would be no different. We'd talk the same way. We were not putting on a show. You
Yep.
like us, you don't like us, that's fine. But in a business context, you now have authority. where you can now turn that up. Okay, listen, we've talked about this 5 times. Let's go. Like, come on. Well, you can't really do that. And as in our YPO world, which I want to talk about a little bit later, peer leadership is now the highest form of leadership. We'll talk
Mm.
about that because I think it's important. And then, so to me, it's the understanding that you use authority because you have authority in the right things, but you need to be the same human. If you're a heart leader, you're a heart leader. If you're an
Yep.
asshole, then that's who you are. But people expect that you're an asshole, and they're consistently understanding and expecting it. Doesn't mean they don't like you. They just know you're a really tough human being. So that's kind of how I would see that.
I agree with you. And I think I like that authority distinction there, but it is how you show up. If you're a heart leader, and I know that you are, and I am, we're going to show up that way all the time, even when I'm having the asshole conversation,
Yeah.
even when I'm having the tough conversation. I'm still going to show up as a heart leader,
Yeah.
but that's the only way I know how to be. And I think that not trying to be a chameleon to be what the other person wants or expects or
Yeah.
needs or
Yeah.
what you think they want, need, or expect is really, really important.
So let's talk about comes up in leadership all the time. Kindness versus weakness, or the perception of weakness. Walk me through your perception of, what kind leadership and servant leadership is, versus perceived as being weak.
Yeah, servant leadership often gets labeled with this weak leadership or soft leadership because people think they perceive it to be campfires and kumbaya, and we're
Yeah.
just all here, as a social exercise. And it's not that at all. And I like to use the framing language of we are going to be kind, but not nice. And
Hmm.
there's a really big distinction between those two things. I can be kind and deliver hard news, but I can be nice and I'm just going to tell you, oh, you're great. This is fine. Don't do that. Don't worry. We'll be good. But
Yeah.
if you're not doing a great job, I am doing you a disservice by being nice to you and telling you you're fine. I need to be kind and say, hey, Alan, we agreed that these were the expectations and the outcomes. We're not there yet. And so we
Yeah.
need to reconcile that difference. In order for you to be successful in this organization, we have to make these adjustments. If you're able to do that, love it. It's your choice. But if you're not able to do that, it's also your choice. And I'll happily help you find a great glide path out. But I'm enabling you to make choices. And
Smart.
that's kind. I can do it very compassionately, very authentically, but I can't just mask it. And I think that when you think about what real servant leadership is, it's enabling the success of others. And that doesn't mean here in this organization. It doesn't mean
True.
here in this role. It means I am going to make sure you're successful without selling out the success of the organization, the success of the role, because I've got other people that are counting on
Yeah.
this. Like it's not just about making you happy. And I think that's where what people think is they think servant
Hmm.
leadership and they think it's about being a cheerleader. And nothing could be further from the truth.
What a great, I love that. You should write a book about that because I think people miss that. And people want to, Maslow was kind of right in his hierarchy of needs. I think that, every human needs that. But what I loved about what you just said was it's bigger than the company, it's the person. So if they're going to be successful in another place because of their interaction with me, there's this karma circle that's real, isn't it? Have you experienced that when you've helped someone through it? They're at another company and now they're bringing you in to work with them or something like that?
100%. And, when you're doing the right thing for that other person, they may not see it in the moment,
Yeah.
but years later, I had dinner 2 weeks ago with someone I fired
So when you
because
fire,
yeah,
yeah.
and they were, I say I fired them. It was just not the right fit. And we
Yeah.
empowered a better choice.
Yeah.
And you know what? Because they were a great human being, wonderful human being, needed different experiences. The role changed, the company had changed, there were different needs. And I admire the heck out of him and I respect him. And we had dinner together. And, we're going to be, and things are going to come full circle
Yeah.
because it wasn't about me and it wasn't about him. It was about making sure he was successful, the company was successful, he was successful, wasn't the right fit. And
Love
you know
that.
what? Things work out. There's such a great karma circle.
Yeah, I love that because it is, there's no coincidences in the world, and the people that come into our lives come in for a reason. We don't always know what they are, may never know what they are, but they're there for a reason to teach us something, right?
100%. And you know what? It is when you embrace that mindset, that attitude, I
Yeah.
think your entire lens on life changes.
Well, let's talk about a lens of life and an organization that we both love, YPO. So, talk to me about at least maybe I'll make a statement and I'd like you to react to it. How's that?
Perfect.
YPO provides leaders with the highest form of leadership experience and practice versus anything else they could do in their lives. Tell me yes, no, or why not?
Yes, beyond equivocation. And here's why. In my experience, because you get to surround yourself with other like minded, like driven peers, uniquely situated with different lenses on life to sharpen against. And so I love
Mm,
Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron. And I think
love that.
YPO is the um, absolute manifestation of that because no one, you're not competing,
Yeah.
you're sharpening. And I think that that is absolutely the case with YPO because you just have shared confidential, all the benefits, confidentiality, but it's this pure sharpening that makes it unequivocally a benefit for me.
Yeah. And the other part, of course, when you're leading peers with no real authority, you have perceived authority based on whatever your position is. But the leadership, you said the word is influence.
Mm.
This is the ultimate practice of that, isn't it?
It really is. And, those aren't my words. That's John Maxwell. Leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. And to have influence over another, like most of the YPOers that I've been associated with are incredible human beings, way better than I am. Like they're just amazing leaders and builders and accomplished people. But to have influence with them, to
Yeah.
connect, to listen, to learn, to share, and for them to appreciate what you bring to the table,
Yeah.
like influences the ability to listen and then add value with no expectation of return. And
Yeah.
I it's so powerful. I just had a forum meeting earlier this week as we record this, and I always come away from forum just jazzed up and more complete as a human.
Yeah. No, it's good. And it's you scale YPO scales trust really well, as we know. And as we know, trust is the foundation of leadership, it's the foundation of everything in our lives. But when you have, you and I met, and we went like right, you go to the 5%, and just for everybody's clarification, the 5% really just means the most important things that are vulnerable to you and emotional to you versus just talking about the travel log of things that you did in your life. And that's what Dusty, mirrored for us when I asked him that question. And so that's why we dive in. And as leaders, you use the word, it can be really lonely.
Mm.
And tell us about why YPO can help. I don't want this to be a YPO commercial, but it's part of our lives. How can help with that loneliness and what Forum does for that?
Well, leadership is lonely. It is by design because there are things when you're in a leadership role that you have to be aware of. You can't share into your teams. Like if you're having significant worry or doubt, you don't want to be walking the front lines and talking about that because
Yeah.
you want to be authentic, but you need to be judicious.
Hmm.
And the the loneliness there though is self-selected if you maintain it. And so what YPO does or other forum environments is
Yeah.
it gives you an outlet without fear of reprisal or violation of confidence or judgment
Yeah.
to
Smart.
share what's on your heart, what's on your mind, and gain perspective. And so I think that the forum type of environment, that it's a core keystone of of my business is how do you take and give people an environment of confidentiality and trust and remove this emotional feeling of am I the only one that feels this way?
Mm,
Is it just me?
yeah.
Am I crazy?
Yeah.
You're not crazy. You need to get it out. And you have to have a place and space to do that. And I've been in a forum environment for 20 plus years. And it would be, I would say, not to make a commercial for YPO, but I think it's one of the most transformational
Sure.
components of leadership. However you get it, YPO, Vistage, whatever, a forum of your peers
Yeah.
removes the isolation.
And the other thing that you can do that you can take to your business is, all of your teams need safety, right? Back to
Mm.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? They want to feel that, they can be trusted, they can speak up, they feel protected. Uh, a lot of leaders never talk about that word safety and how to make a safe space for people to flourish. Have you experienced that in the work that you do?
Yeah. And so I'll give you a really specific example and a tool that folks can use to create a space and place of safety.
Good.
So this is about 10 years ago, and I got an Apple Watch because I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, I like the new tech. And so I got this Apple Watch, and yeah, it was cool. Like I got my text messages. Like I had no idea why that was important to me, but it was. And my one-to-ones with my direct reports were carved out to be their time. I didn't set the agenda. It was not for me to, like they got an hour, and we're going to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And so I was having a one-on-one conversation with my COO, George, and I had had this watch maybe a month or two. And we're in my office, and I never sat behind a desk. I always had, kind of some office chairs on a table, and we'd sit across from each other and just talk if we weren't going for a walk to do this. And my watch was dinging. And I'd look at my text. I didn't think anything of
Yeah.
it. It was now
Yeah.
completely just a mechanical thing. Well,
Yeah.
George stopped the meeting and he said, "Hey, Dusty, clearly you have something more important or more impactful going on in your life right now. And I would like to reschedule my meeting until a time when you can be fully present."
Ouch.
Now, this is a guy who, quote unquote, works for me.
Yeah.
The place of space and safety was created. Well, that wasn't him, doing anything wrong. In fact, that was expected behavior. We had I practiced and I'll share with you in your audience in a minute, but created a practice of drafting a rules of engagement guide. And so
Hmm.
myself and our leaders, we would draft our own personal leadership rules of engagement, and we'd share them. And one of the things that I share is, here's what I believe: if you see me violating my principles,
Love it.
the expectation is that you will call me out. And so it's an invitation to accountability, because accountability is something we think about as being foisted upon others. And it's not that at all. It's the honoring of commitments. And so what I was asking for people to do is honor my commitment to them by calling me out. So I wasn't uncomfortable with that. It was a great
Yeah.
message. It was a great story. And I've got a rules of engagement guide. I'll share a link with your audience later. But
That'd be great.
I think it's one of the most transformational practices, because you can do it in about 30 minutes and then you can share it with your teams and you can have a conversation about what good looks like and
Love it.
get better every day.
And you build team, right? You build team when you build trust. I love that. Is such a great story. And he felt comfortable enough that you wouldn't, yell at him or go down his throat for challenging you on one of the things that you agreed to. It's so basic, but so critical.
But that's the thing, Alan, is it is the basic things that we have to execute well. We get all in our heads and get complex. And, sometimes I think we try to make things more complex just to overcome our own insecurities
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
prove to everyone how smart we are. Executing the fundamentals well is what is transformational in organizations. If you don't do the fundamentals, nothing else scales.
Love it. Fantastic. So my last question, I want to talk about leadership and culture.
Mm.
And culture is a big word. Leadership's a part of that. Talk to me about why it's so hard to build a great culture.
Well, I think you first have to start and define what culture is. And the way I think about culture, I can't say it for anyone else, but when I think about culture, I think about a community of committed people to a cause or a purpose. And we have an agreement of norms and behaviors of how we do things here. And so, I don't remember who it was that wrote about it years ago, like a cult like culture where
Hmm.
people are passionately committed to a cause, to a purpose. And so when I think of building culture, we have to understand that our job as leaders is to ensure that well, first off, we have to have clarity, but once we have clarity, that everyone in the organization understands basically 5 questions. Why are we here? What's our purpose beyond making money? Where are we going? What's our vision over the horizon? How are we going to get there? The plan, the method, the process. And then the next 2 questions are the ones where I feel most leaders, most organizations fail miserably. Question number 4, where do I fit in? How
Mm.
does my work connect to all those things? And then question number 5 is the simple one, the what's in it for me. And so our job as leaders to create culture is to collect the stories, to find these norms and cast it into the organization repetitively, continuously, over and over and over again. I mean, it has to sink in, and that's SYNC, sink
Sink
in
in. Love it.
so that, and here's why I think this is so important now. And I'm on a soapbox and I know it.
No, keep it going. It's great.
When we enable our teams to answer those 5 basic, simple questions, when we're not in the room,
Bingo.
what happens is the people with the most context, expertise, and information are empowered to make the best decisions closest to the customer or the problem. And so that's what we're truly trying to get to. Like, that's what culture is. When the person closest to the customer or the problem can make a decision aligned with the interest of the company, the organization, and aligned with the cause, the purpose, the passion, you get magic. And culture is hard and it takes an
Yeah.
intentional curation all the time. And we as leaders, myself most certainly included, get stuck in this doom loop of why do I have to keep talking about it? And when
Yeah.
we're tired of
Yeah.
it, it's
Yeah.
only starting to sink in.
You know what? It's also it reminds me of Jim Collins, of course, always says that success is getting the right people on the bus. Your five
Mm,
questions are also a filter to the right people on the bus, isn't it?
100%. 100%. Like if a person isn't oriented to or aligned with those 5 questions, they're going to eject out. They're not going to
Yeah.
fit. They're going to
Yeah.
select out, or the people in the organization are going to help them select out. Right. And so
Love it.
you've got to have the right people on the bus, and you want to attract, like with a gravitational pull, the people who believe what you believe. And you want to repel, like a virus, those who don't. And I think it was Simon Sinek that talks about that. It's like
Yeah.
when you do that and you do that well, and it takes an incredible investment of energy and effort on the part of the leader, that's when you get magic. Without that, you get an orchestra playing in different pieces at different tempos and at different volumes, and it doesn't sound right.
Love it. So let's wrap up with how do you work with leaders? How do you work with leaders in companies? Give us a little commercial on what you do.
Yeah, so I work with leaders who are tired of being tired. They recognize that they are at an inflection point in their growth. And in order to become the leader that themselves or their organizations need, they have to change. And so, what we do is we put together leadership accelerators where we take like minded leaders in groups of 12 to 15 people, put them in a cohort, give them a leadership operating system that allows them to walk through these frameworks, some of which we've talked about today,
Yeah.
install them alongside others where they can have relational experiences and wisdom through a collective, and install these systems so they can bring back to their organizations. And then we have mastermind groups. Think of a forum experience
Yeah.
where we're taking these groups of people who've been through our accelerators, who have a like-minded system and process, and we put them in a mastermind group where they can continue to sharpen against each other. So that's what we do. It
Love it.
is the most gratifying thing in the world to be able to see others create value in their organizations.
You know, my final question is, why do you love what you do? And you just answered it before I asked it.
I love seeing people. I love seeing people light up and dots connect and creating value for others. It's the most gratifying thing in the world.
So that's your leadership signal. If I were to take it back to the work that we do, is that You get your excitement from seeing others succeed, and that's your tagline. You're in service to others, and you're completely authentic. And I'm so happy that you and I have come into our lives. It's not a coincidence. And we know we have more ahead, and I'm excited about that. How can people reach you, Dusty? How can they reach you if they want more information?
Yeah, I'd say start with this. Like I mentioned, the rules of engagement guide.
We'll
If
get
folks
that.
would like to get that, just go to Arcus, ARCQUS.news. They sign up there. I'll send that guide as a complimentary gift, and then they'll be able to see our other materials, leadership tools, et cetera. But our website is Arcus Group. But if they just go to Arcus, ARCQUS.news, they'll get the newsletter. They'll get that guide right away. And I would love for folks to create their leadership rules of engagement and extend that into their teams, because whether I ever work with them or not, I can take great solace and knowledge knowing that leadership is being perpetuated because people are being intentional and walking the talk. So I'd love for folks to take advantage of that.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's in the show notes so that people can get those links and get the tools that they need. And my friend Dusty, it's exactly what I expected, and I had high expectations. So thank you so much for spending time with our audience and for being so honest and vulnerable and so insightful. There's so many great lessons that you've imparted from a practical, usable point of view, and I appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's such a joy, and I'm looking forward to many, many more conversations, hopefully over a glass of wine soon.
Love it. All right, man. Be well.